Now, good afternoon, and let's start with the dictation. Problem with the term. First part, problem with the term, that is prefix Indian and the term diaspora. So one by one, I will explain and I will dictate it to you. There are two basic problems. There are two basic problems concerning Indian diaspora. First, the prefix Indian, and second, the term diaspora itself. Okay, I'm interrupting the dictation. Uh, Sir, needs some more explanation. Please, in definition of Indian diaspora, you have said that they should be migrated from territory which is currently within the borders of Republic of India. Correct. So I'm confused why Rishi Sunak is considered as Indian diaspora, though he belongs to Karachi, which is not currently within the Indian border. See, I told you that Mr. Rishi Sunak is following Indian culture, tradition, etc. And you missed one point. Further, it said, you are mentioning just one part of the Indian diaspora definition, which said that the people who have migrated from the territory which is a part of Republic of India. Further, it says that the people who have migrated to far off places but have still retained their emotional, cultural, and spiritual link will be an spiritual link with the mother country will be a part of Indian diaspora. I hope you understand this now. You have used only half part of the definition, not the full part. That's why. Further, it said you missed that the people who have migrated to far off places and have still retained their emotional, cultural, and spiritual link. Right? No, because of his wife, he is not considered an Indian diaspora because he is pursuing the Indian culture, Indian tradition, etc. That's why he is considered as Indian diaspora. Right? Okay, so let's continue with the dictation, and I will be taking further question at the end. There are two basic problems concerning Indian diaspora. First, the prefix Indian, and second, the term diaspora itself. First, the prefix Indian, and second, the term diaspora itself. The implication of the first is that there is single India with its people. The implication of the first is that there is single India with its people who are somehow united under one flag. This is far from obvious. India has been described as a nation, and its fragments. India has been described as a nation and its fragments. Here the unity of India, here the unity of India is a construction. Here the unity of India is a construction. Moreover, Indian abroad do not so much, moreover, Indian abroad do not so much identify, moreover, Indian abroad do not so much identify with India as a nation, with India as a nation, but with the homeland, but with the homeland, that is a specific region, a specific region and territory, a specific region and territory from where they migrated, a specific region or territory from where they migrated or their ancestor came from. It appears that region and territory, it appears that region and territory are much more important. It appears that region and territory are much more important in structuring the migrant identity, in structuring the migrant identity rather than religion and nationality, rather than religion and nationality. For example, you will find a lot more in common, you will find a lot more in common between a Gujarati Hindu and a Gujarati Muslim. You will find a lot more in common between a Gujarati Hindu and a Gujarati Muslim rather than between Gujarati Hindu and Punjabi Hindu. Despite this problem, Government of India, despite this problem, Government of India made a strong effort to reconnect the diaspora, to reconnect the diaspora. Here the word Indian, here the word Indian is clearly intended to unify all the migrants. The word Indian should be under inverted comma. Here the word Indian is clearly intended to unify the migrants whose origin lie within the current borders, whose origin lies within the current borders of the Republic of India. This means that the prefix Indian has been defined by the Indian government. This means that the prefix Indian has been defined by the Indian government. Now, problem with the term diaspora. Problem with the term diaspora. India is a country exemplified by diversity. India is a country exemplified by diversity. Over 1.4 billion people, lives over 1.3 million square kilometers of territory. The people of the country speaks 22 major languages in over 1500 dialects. There are 7 major religious groups with various sects and subsects. There are dozen ethnic communities who are living in different parts of India. So, as long as socio-economic and socio-political equilibrium is maintained, we say that there is unity in diversity, and this has been the hallmark of India's history. Now, the due to this peculiar characteristics of India, Indian government set up a high level committee on Indian diaspora under the chairmanship of Mr. L.M. Singhvi. The high level committee was entrusted with the task of defining diaspora and Indian diaspora, because India assumed a special place. It did not fit into the definition of diaspora which is familiar around the world. So it needed a special definition. Okay, I will be a bit slow. Thanks for reminding me if I'm fast. Okay, so you want me to repeat? Okay. So from where I should repeat? Please tell me. From where I should repeat? Or you have written up till now? Okay, I will dictate it slowly, no problem. So in order to define diaspora and Indian diaspora, Government of India set up a high level committee Government of India set up a high-level committee under the chairmanship of Mr. L.M. Singhvi. This high-level committee was entrusted with the task of okay, you want me to repeat from the beginning. Okay, so problem with the term. Let's start from there. India is a country exemplified by diversity. India is a country exemplified by diversity. Over 1.4 billion people lives over 3.1 million square kilometers of territory. The people of the country speaks 22 major languages. The people of the country speak 22 major languages in over 1500 dialects. After every 4 or 5 kilometers, the dialects changes. After every 4 or 5 kilometers, dialects change. There are 7 major religious groups. There are 7 major religious groups with various sects and subsects. There are 7 major religious groups with various sects and subsects. There are more than dozen ethnic communities. There are more than dozen ethnic communities living throughout India. So in this situation, the definition of diaspora, definition of diaspora is not applicable in case of India. So in this situation, definition of diaspora is not applicable to India. That's why government of India formed high level committee on Indian diaspora. That's why government of India formed high level committee on Indian diaspora under the chairmanship of Mr. L.M. Singhvi. Under the chairmanship of Mr. L.M. Singhvi. This high level committee was entrusted with many tasks like how to define diaspora and Indian diaspora, how to define diaspora and Indian diaspora, and second, how to bring Indian diaspora closer to India. How to bring Indian diaspora closer to India. The high level committee defined diaspora as the high level committee defined diaspora as under inverted comma communities of migrant living or settled communities of migrant living or settled permanently in other countries, communities of migrant living or settled permanently in other countries, but aware of its origin, and identity, and maintaining varying degree of linkages with their mother country, inverted comma close. The high level committee, next paragraph, the high level committee defined Indian diaspora as under inverted comma again people who migrated from territories that are currently within the borders of the Republic of India, that are currently within the borders of the Republic of India. It also refers to their descendants. It also refers to their descendants. Furthermore, the government added, the government added that all those people residing in distant land, all those people residing in distant land and have retained their spiritual, cultural and emotional link with the country of their origin will be Indian diaspora, inverted comma closed. The official definition deliberately use the word spiritual link because spirituality encompasses every religion, that is, it is present in every religion, and the motive of the government was not to exclude any religious group from the membership of Indian diaspora. That's it. Now, second part, why maximum diaspora formation took place during colonial period. See, try to understand this. Why maximum diaspora formation? See, it's not that migration was not happening before or after. But why we are saying maximum? What's the logic behind this? The simple logic is that we have a data to back up that this much people moved out of India during this particular time period. Before that, we didn't have any data, and after that, such large exodus never happened. So that's why maximum diaspora formation during colonial period. Clear? Now, why migration happens? Migration basically happens due to push and pull factor. Now, Both these factors has to work in tandem for the migration to take place. In the absence of any one factor, migration will not happen. Now, what are the push factor? Now, push factor may be pandemic, war, uh, unemployment, poverty, religious persecution, insecurity. And what are the pull factors? Better lifestyle, health services, education, employment, better living condition, etc. So, outside India during that time period, there was a pull factor, and inside India, there was a push factor. Now, what led to pull factor outside India and what led to push factor inside India, that we'll discuss under this particular topic. And mind you, this question has been asked in civil services, right? So, just try to understand this, right? Now, external factor, let's start with the external factor which acted as a pull factor. Now, industrial revolution. See, industrial revolution during that time period, industrial revolution was going on in Europe. People started getting employment in factories. They started earning more money. They were offered better working condition than plantation. So, as they started earning more money, so this led to what? This led to change in their consumption habit. So, because see, it's quite natural that when you start earning more money, you will start spending more money. And it's a human nature that initially first you will try to spend money on consumption item, then on clothing, etc., right? Or some luxurious good. So when they started earning more money, it led to change in their consumption habit, and they started consuming those products which were previously meant for elitist people consumption. So, so previously, see what happened, try to understand. They started consuming those products which were previously meant for elitist people consumption. That whatever elite people used to consume, the common masses, due to increase in their income, they started consuming those products. For example, tea, sugar, coffee, etc. So these were the products which were previously consumed by the elite, but now the common masses can also afford it because through industrial revolution their income increased. They started earning more money. So as the common masses started consuming these products, suddenly the demand for these products increased, and as per some data it increased to the extent to the tune of around 400% or so. And as you know that these products are plantation based product, so are labor intensive. So without dependable supply of labor, plantation could hardly survive. So naturally this led to what? Huge increase in demand for labor, right? Secondly, since slavery was abolished in British Empire around 1834, so it was impossible to force anybody to work on the plantation. But there was huge demand for plantation product. So how to attract labor to work on the plantation field? So that's why the government of the day started giving incentive to plantation worker. Now through incentive, they wanted to attract labor to work on the plantation field, and naturally the incentive should be more than what the people are earning in industries. Then only they will be attracted to work on the plantation field. So this also led to increase in demand for labor. Thirdly, the opening up of Suez Canal. Now the opening up of the Suez Canal not only reduced the distance between the Asian peripheral economy and the world capitalist system, but it also led to increase in trade between the two economies. See, the Suez Canal, by reducing the distance, increased the frequency of trade. It reduced the distance into nearly half. And secondly, it also integrated the world economy with the Asian peripheral economy, right? So this led to what? This led to increase in trade with Asia in general and India in particular. Now this increase in trade meant increase in profit. Now this increase in profit was further invested in plantation and mining, which will give more profit, right? As both of them were labor intensive, so naturally it also led to increase in demand for labor. So outside India, what was the situation? Now if you analyze outside India, there was huge increase in demand for labor. Now what was the situation inside India during that time period? Now during that time period, the socio-economic condition in India was such that peasantry was in great distress. Now why peasantry was in great distress? Because revenue administration of Bengal passed into the hands of East India Company in 1765, and the company started extracting more revenue from the peasant. And as the company started extracting more revenue, as per some stat, to the tune of around 75 to 80%. So, for example, if worker was earning 100 rupees, then he has to pay 75 to 80 rupees as a tax. So, definitely it put immense pressure on the peasant, that how they will be supporting their family. But this was not the end of it. In 1793, Wide Permanent Land Settlement Act, Jamindari system was introduced, and this led to what? This led to creation of an intermediary between the company and the peasant. Now here the peasant was at the receiving end. How? Try to understand. The company, without reducing its share, now the Jamindar also wanted his own share. So, due to this, like suppose as I gave you a figure, that if peasant was earning 100 rupees, he was already paying 75 to 80 rupees as tax. And if Jamindar now wanted 10 rupees or 15 rupees, what is left with the peasant? So, peasantry was in great distress. And this resulted in what? This resulted in panic selling of the land. Why? Because to avoid debt trap, so that they don't get involved in vicious circle. So, they started selling off their land in order to pay off the debt and remain debt free. And this led to creation of what? Large pool of landless laborer who were unemployed. This led to large pool of landless laborer who were unemployed. Secondly, famine. There was frequent and widespread famine during that time period, especially from 1860 to 1908. And during that famine period, you will be surprised to know that the government of the day was pursuing economic policy which was completely detrimental for the common masses. They were putting less emphasis on food crop and lot more emphasis on cash crop. So, this resulted into what? Availability of lesser food grain in Indian market, and due to this there was increase in its price. Now, this was not again the end. During the peak famine period, the government also started exporting food grain. So, this created further shortage of food grain in Indian market and increase in its price to such an extent that it was beyond the means of the common masses to purchase food grain from open market. So what was the result? This led to large scale starvation death and panic selling of the land so as to survive the famine period. The people started selling of their land so as to get some money and use that money to purchase food grain from the open market. So this ultimately resulted in what? Large pool of people or landless people who were unemployed. Now thirdly, the destruction of handicraft industry. Now as all of you know, during that time period, India was a great manufacturing power. Even the British cotton industry was unable to compete with Indian cotton industry. This industry provided employment opportunity to millions of people in India. Indian cotton industry was thriving. So what the Britishers did? They prohibited the entry of Indian cotton goods into England. But this did not help them much because the Britishers were still willing to pay higher price for superior Indian cotton goods. So what the Britishers ultimately did? They prohibited the entry of Indian cotton goods into England, and this had adverse impact on our industry, and this led to gradual destruction of our industry, and the millions of people who were earlier employed, gradually they became unemployed. So what was the situation? The situation was that outside India there was huge demand for labor, and in India millions of labor were waiting to be employed. Now in this scenario, the imperial government, that is UK government, put pressure on Indian government to export its labor to various British colonies. So 98% of the people who moved out of India during this time period were labor, and that's why India is referred to as labor diaspora. Only 2% went out as middle class and traders. I hope this is clear to everybody, right? So let's start the dictation now. Why maximum diaspora formation took place during the colonial period? Why maximum diaspora formation took place during the colonial period. The origin of Indian diaspora, the origin of Indian diaspora lies mainly in the subjugation of India, lies mainly in the subjugation of India by the British and its incorporation into the British Empire and its incorporation into the British Empire. The historical background against which overseas migration the historical background against which overseas migration was intensified was the penetration of British mercantile capitalism in Asia, was the penetration of British mercantile capitalism in Asia. Now, external factor. Industrial revolution was going on in Europe. People started getting employment in factories. They started earning more money. And as they started earning more money, they started spending more money. This led to change in their consumption habit. This led to change in their consumption habit. and they started consuming those product which were previously meant for elitist people consumption, which were previously meant for elitist people consumption. In bracket you may write, that is tea, sugar, coffee, etc. Bracket close. As the common masses started consuming these products, as the common masses started consuming these products, it led to huge increase in demand. It led to huge increase in demand for these products. And as these products were plantation based, so were labor intensive. That is, without dependable supply of labor, plantation could hardly survive. So this resulted in huge increase in demand for labor. This resulted in huge increase in demand for labor. Secondly, since slavery was abolished, it was impossible to find labor who could work on plantation field. The only alternative was to give them incentive. The only alternative was to give them incentive which is more than industry wage. So this also resulted in This also resulted in huge increase in demand for labor. This also resulted in huge increase in demand for labor. Thirdly, thirdly, the opening up of Suez Canal. Thirdly, the opening up of Suez Canal not only the opening up of Suez Canal not only integrated the world capitalist system, not only integrated the world capitalist system with the Asian peripheral economy, with the Asian peripheral economy, but it also reduced the distance between the two economies, reduce the distance between the two economies into nearly half, into nearly half. This resulted in increase in trade. This resulted in increase in trade with Asia in general, and India in particular. This resulted in increase in trade with Asia in general and India in particular. The increase in trade meant increase in profit. The increase in trade meant increase in profit, and this profit was further invested in plantation and mining, and this profit was further invested in plantation and mining. And as both of them were labor intensive, so naturally it led to increase in demand for labor. Thirdly, thirdly we have discussed. So change the paragraph. So from the above paragraph, it is clear that outside India, there was huge increase in demand for labor. Outside India, there was huge increase in demand for labor. In India, the socio-economic condition was such that peasantry was in great distress. In India, the socio-economic condition was such that peasantry was in great distress because revenue administration of Bengal passed into the hands of East India Company. Revenue administration of Bengal passed into the hands of East India Company. The company started extracting more revenue from the peasant. The company started extracting more revenue from the peasant. In bracket you may write somewhere to the tune of 75 to 80%, somewhere to the tune of 75 to 80%, bracket close. And it happened in 1765. It happened in 1765. In 1793, wide, VIDE, wide Permanent Land Settlement Act, wide Permanent Land Settlement Act, Jamindari system was introduced. Jamindari system was introduced, and this led to creation of an intermediary. This led to creation of an intermediary between the company and the peasant. The peasant was at the receiving end. The peasant was at the receiving end because the company without reducing its share, the Jamindar wanted his own share. The Jamindar wanted his own share. This put further stress on the peasant. This put further stress on the peasant. And in order to avoid debt trap, in order to avoid a debt trap, the peasant started selling off their land. The peasant started selling off their land and this led to creation of large pool of landless laborer. This led to creation of large pool of landless laborer who were unemployed. Large pool of landless laborer who were unemployed. Secondly, widespread and frequent famine. Secondly, widespread and frequent famine along with local scarcity throughout the 19th century was also a major contributory factor in adding to the misery of rural population. In the last 4 decades of the 19th century, the government pursued economic policy which put lot more emphasis on cash crop rather than on food crop. This resulted in shortage of food grain. In Indian market and increase in its price. This resulted in shortage of food grain in Indian market and increase in its price. During the peak famine period, the government started exporting food grain. The government started exporting food grain, which led to further shortage of food grain, in Indian market and increase in its price to such an extent that it was beyond the means of the common masses to purchase food grain to purchase food grain from the open market. This resulted in large scale starvation death. This resulted in large scale starvation death and panic selling of the land As a result, it led to creation of large pool of landless people who were unemployed. Thirdly, India was a great manufacturing power. Mainly because of its handicraft industry. The industry provided employment opportunity to millions of people. Cotton industry was thriving, and even the British cotton industry was unable to compete with Indian cotton industry. So the Britishers imposed heavy custom duty. So the Britishers imposed heavy custom duty on Indian import in England. But this did not help them much. As the Britishers were willing to pay higher price for superior Indian cotton goods. So ultimately the Britishers prohibited the entry of Indian cotton goods This had far-reaching impact. This had far-reaching impact on Indian handicraft industry, and gradually it led to the destruction of Indian cotton goods industry. So the millions of people who were earlier employed gradually they became unemployed. Change the paragraph. From the above, it is clear that outside India, there was huge increase in demand for labor. And in India, millions of labor were waiting to be employed. So in this scenario, the imperial government, that is UK government, put pressure on Indian government to export its labor to various British colonies. 98% of the people who moved out of India during this time period were labor, in bracket you write, and that's why India is referred to as labor diaspora. India is referred to as labor diaspora. Only 2% went out as middle class people and traders. So we have completed first two topics. Now the third one, patterns of migration. Now before starting this topic, I have two questions. So I will like to answer that. Sir, if I left India, then I am a migrant. But if I come back again to India, then I be a migrant or not? No, you won't be a migrant then. When you move from point A to B, you become migrant. From B to A, when you come, you no longer a migrant. Sir, in past, a lot of king like Babur, founder of Mughal Empire, came from outside countries of India, and their next generation people still exist. And if these people go to abroad and get settled there permanently, will these people be considered Indian diaspora or diaspora of their concerned country from where their ancestor came? See, beta, don't get confused. Uh, the simple thing which you have to keep in mind, as I explained in the concept of diaspora, integration and assimilation. All people who leaves any country and move to any other country are migrant. But all migrant are not diaspora. Only those who integrate, that is, who maintain their distinctive identity, but still at the same time respect the country's culture, tradition, law, etc., are diaspora. The people who assimilate, they cease to be a diaspora. Assimilation means, like, suppose if you dissolve sugar in water, you can't distinguish. So that is the case. But if you put black paper in water, you can clearly distinguish that. So that black paper is diaspora who maintain their distinctive identity. They integrate, but they do not assimilate. And the position, if they pursue that country's culture, tradition, etc., they cease to be a diaspora. For example, Kamala Harris. But Rishi Sunak still Indian diaspora because he pursues Indian culture, Indian tradition, etc. Right? That's why I gave you this example. And diaspora are the torchbearer of the country from which they belong. Okay. Now coming to patterns of migration. Now, patterns of migration, that is, it simply means how people moved out of India during colonial period. So, historically, three distinctive patterns can be identified. The first one is indentured labor migration. Second is Kangni or Mestre labor migration. And the third one is free or passage migration. Now, indentured labor migration, officially it is also known as Girmitia. It is also known as Girmitia system, officially. Now, why it is known as Girmitia? Let's start from here itself. So, I'm just giving you a simple exercise, just simple exercise, and please do revert back to me answering yes, you got it, or you didn't get that, right? I hope you will be answering just now. The simple exercise is you just go on speaking the word agreement very fast and tell me what you end up speaking. Go up speaking the word agreement very fast. And what you end up speaking, please do reply. I haven't got any reply. Someone please reply. so that I can proceed further. Agreement, 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 like this. Okay, so I got one reply, so I'm proceeding. So the simple answer is the people during that time period could not pronounce the word agreement correctly. So they end up speaking girmit, 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 girmit. If you go on speaking, someone has still written agreement, so you were going pretty slow. Go on speaking the word agreement, 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 agreement. So it will come girmit. So that was the only reason, because people during that time period could not pronounce the word agreement correctly. So that's why they used to call it girmit. कि गिरमिट हो गया यानी एग्रीमेंट हो गया. So that's why it was known as Girmitia system officially, because the masses called it Girmit. Now, what exactly this system was all about? Now, this system, you can call it bonded labor system, because worker was bound to work for a given employer, or it was also known as contractual labor, because there was a fixed period of contract. So that's why it was both bonded and contractual labor system. Now, what exactly this system was all about? Now, it was an agreement between the labor and the employer in front of a magistrate, wherein labor was bound to work for a particular employer for a fixed period of term, which usually varied from 3 to 5 years period, right? And after, for a fixed period of term, which usually varied from 3 to 5 years period, on pre-decided wage, and the worker was to perform the task assigned to him, right? Now, after the completion of the contract period, labor was free either to re-indenture, that is to re-enter into the contract with the same employer, or re-enter into the agreement with the same employer, or was legally free to work elsewhere in the colony. Clear? Now, after successfully completing 10 years period, labor was entitled to two benefits. First, subsidized return passage, and second was offered a piece of land with some money. As I told you initially, that hardly anybody opted for this option A, that is subsidized return passage, because there was a strong notion prevalent during those days that if you go on a long voyage, or if you are crossing 7 seas, you are creating some kind of sin, and it is impossible for you to come back alive. And secondly, even if you come back alive, you will be treated as malech or an outcast. So hardly anybody opted for this option. The second option was offered a piece of land with some money, which I told you was a win-win situation for both the labor as well as the uh, Britishers. Why? Because for the labor, it gave them a sense of security, freedom, and ownership, that now they no longer will be called labor. From now on, they are owner of their own piece of land. And for the Britishers, they wanted the labor to stay on the plantation field. So that's why it was a win-win situation for both of them. Clear? Now, under this system, this question was asked in civil services, mind you, that which countries are known as Girmitia countries. So basically, the countries where labor went under agreement are known as Girmitia countries. So there are 5 countries in which labor went under agreement, and they are known as Girmitia countries. These 5 countries are Trinidad and Tobago, Fiji, Mauritius, Guyana, and Suriname, right? And this system started when slavery was abolished. Now, coming back to the third part of this question, this topic, whether this system was introduced in India for the first time or it was borrowed from somewhere as it was prevalent elsewhere in the world. So regarding this, what I must say is that this system was already prevalent. This system was already prevalent in Latin and practiced by Latin American and Cuban colonists, and they were importing Chinese indentured labor from the Portuguese settlement of Macau. And why this system was introduced? The simple answer is because slavery was abolished and labor was still needed to work on the plantation field. Because without dependable supply of labor, plantation could hardly survive. Now, so I hope indentured labor migration part is clear. I am repeating it again for the sake of clarity. See, indenture system, it was borrowed by the Britishers from Latin American and Cuban colonists because they were practicing it. They were importing Chinese indentured labor from the Portuguese settlement of Macau. And since slavery was abolished, they needed labor because without dependable supply of labor, their plantation could hardly survive. So, where the labor will come from? The labor will definitely be coming only from British colonies. And since slavery was abolished, so you cannot force anybody to work on the plantation. So what was the other alternative? The other alternative was to provide them with some system which gave them a sense of confidence that they no longer will be exploited. So that's why this indentured labor system, in which it was an official system in which a data was maintained that who is going out, who is signing the agreement, where he is going, etc. So under this system, an agreement was signed between the labor and the employer, in front of a magistrate, wherein labor was bound to work for a particular employer for a fixed period of term, which usually varied from 3 to 5 years period, performing the task assigned to him for a specific wage. Now, after completion of the contract, labor was free either to re-indenture with the same employer, that is to re-enter into the contract with the same employer, or technically he was free to work anywhere he wants in the colony. And after the completion of 10 years period, he was entitled to two benefits, as I already explained it to you. And under this system, labor were exported to Girmitia countries like Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, Fiji, Guyana and Mauritius. Now, Kangni and Mestre system. See, Kangni is derived from Tamil word Kankani, which basically means overseer or foreman, or you can say senior most person. Now try to understand. I will try to make you understand through example. Now this system was prevalent in South India, right? Now what exactly this system was all about? Now under this system, South Indian laborers were mostly exported to Sri Lanka and Malaysia. That's it. Short distance. And mind you, this was not official system. This was not official system as indentured labor migration was. So what exactly this system was and how it operated? So let's try to understand through example. Suppose I am a Kangni. Kangni means he himself was an Indian diaspora or senior most person, and suppose I am working in Sri Lanka plantation field. Now after the plantation period is over, I walk to my employer and tell him that I want to go back to my hometown. He says perfectly fine. Since you are going to your hometown, just take some money with you, and if you find someone is interested in accompanying you where you work, you just pay their family in advance and take that person along with you. I said perfectly fine, no problem, I will do it. So after the plantation season is over, I return back to my hometown in South India. And there in my village, I talk to everybody whether they are interested in accompanying me where I work. So naturally they had many queries which I answered. So some of them got interested, and as instructed I paid their family in advance, and when the plantation season arrived, I took them along where I worked. So this was the system. Now under this system, as I told you, South Indian labor were mostly exported to Sri Lanka and Malaysia. Now this is the genesis of LTTE problem. You might have heard about it. Now here what happened was that as more and more people started moving to Sri Lanka and gradually their number increased to lakhs and lakhs, so they started demanding for their homeland there. Now during that time period, Lal Bahadur Shastri was the Prime Minister of India and Sri Mao Bandaranaike was the Sri Lankan President. Now both of them entered into an agreement where it was decided that India will take back around 10 lakh of people and 5 lakh will be given citizenship of that country. But somehow this did not materialize and this flared up into this issue. And I'm not going into it because it's not part of our topic. Just for sake of understanding, I'm telling you that due to this, that problem was there due to this particular system. And mind you, this was not official system. It was only a verbal contract, not a legal contract. So legally, worker was free. So Kangni himself was an Indian diaspora who used to recruit labor by paying them in advance. Under this system, South Indian labor were mostly exported to Sri Lanka and Malaysia. So this was Kangni system. Clear? Now Mestre system. Now Mestre system, it is derived from Portuguese word mestre. So mestre is labor contractor, chief mestre, or it's a labor contractor, you may say. Now what exactly this system was all about, try to understand. This system was characterized by labor, middleman and employer relationship. This labor contractor or the charge mestre was also known as middleman. So what exactly this system was all about? Try to understand this again through example. I will try to make this clear. Now suppose in today's time you have to build a house of your own specification. I'm not talking about flat. Flat is a ready-made structure which you can swap. But house you have to build. So do you think you have sufficient time at your disposal to look after everything? I don't think so. So in this situation, what is the other alternative? To hire a contractor. And by hiring a contractor, what you will be doing? You will be paying him for his services that he will offer. So what he is doing? He is taking money from the employer because you have employed him. Secondly, now this contractor, what he will do? He will hire labor like carpenter, plumber, electrician, etc. And in order to award them contract, what he will do? He will charge certain percentage from them as well. So what he is doing? He is earning money from the labor himself. So in nutshell, what this middleman is doing? He is earning money both from the labor as well as the employer. Or you can say the modern day property dealer. He is also doing the same kind of thing. So this system was prevalent during that time period, colonial period. And under this system, North and East Indian labor were mostly exported to Burma. And this you can say is the genesis of Rohingyas problem. Now, what is the position of Indian government regarding this? The Indian government is clear that they do not belong to India. They migrated from undivided India, which included Pakistan and Bangladesh. And it is the duty of Pakistan and Bangladesh to accommodate them, not India. And moreover, they pose a security risk to our country because their hand has been found in Bodh Gaya bomb blast. Secondly, a case was referred in the Supreme Court, and this was the argument put forward by the government of India. So the Supreme Court also refused to intervene because it was the national security issue. Now, regarding Rohingyas, they are the most exploited refugee in the world. They are confined to a Rakhine province where they are in constant fight with the Buddhist monk. Now, even the Bangladesh has taken around 2 lakh of them, but they have kept them on some isolated island which is most likely to submerge in near future. Now, Pakistan is training them in jihadi activities to carry out their nefarious design, and that's why they remain exploited lot. As per UN report, they are the most exploited refugee lot in the world. So this is mestre system where the middleman or the charge mestre used to earn money from both the labor and the employer. Clear? I hope it's clear now. Okay. Now, free of passage migration. Free of passage. Now, it is different from the other two because the other two are labor migration. This is not a labor migration. Now, so in this you can say the people who can pay from their own pocket to move out of India will come under free of passage migration. So under this system, mostly Gujarati and Punjabi trader moved out of India and settled in East African countries of Tanzania, Uganda and Kenya. Right? Now, after living there for generation, when Kenyatta became president of Kenya and Idi Amin became president of Uganda, they gave ultimatum to the Indian people to leave their country. During that time period, Srimati Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India. She decided to intervene on the behalf of diaspora, and somehow through different diplomatic channels, she forced Idi Amin to pay compensation to the Indian people who were leaving their country. Now, it has huge symbolic significance that how much a country cares for its diaspora, that it has forced the foreign country to pay compensation. But these people did not come back to India. But from Africa, they migrated to US, UK, Canada, and now they are rich and famous there. And that's why they are also known as twice migrant. Now, this question has also been asked in civil services. And mind you, this assumes importance this time as well, because both Rishi Sunak and Kamala Harris, political personalities, are twice migrant. Right. So this is it. Dictation part I will continue tomorrow because it is not possible to finish today. So I will be taking up question. If you have question, please let me know. One question, sir: an illegal person or illegal labor can part of diaspora or not? Yes, he will be a part of diaspora if he maintains distinctive identity. But if he see, the bottom line is, if you assimilate, you cease to be a diaspora. If you maintain your distinctive identity, you will be a part of diaspora. That's it. Any other question? Any other question? Shall I conclude then? Please reply. Better if Nikki Haley, Yasbardhan Singh or Vivek Ranaswamy, if any of one of them are pursuing Indian culture, then they will be a part of Indian diaspora. Why not? If they are not, they will not. They will be not. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, better. We'll meet tomorrow.